Nothing prepared me for this part of retirement. I thought reaching state pension age would feel like reaching the end of something. You know the picture: retirement, pensioner. Oh, pensioner. What a word that is. Older person, slower life, a completely different stage of life. And then it happened. I've qualified for my state pension. And the strange thing was, I still felt exactly like me. There wasn't some magical moment where I suddenly felt old. There wasn't a switch that got flipped. I didn't wake up one morning and think, right then, I'm suppose I'm a pensioner now. In fact, if I'm honest, I don't really know what a pensioner is supposed to feel like. Old? I don't know. When I was younger, pensioners seemed old. And I don't mean that in a bad way, just older than me. People who had reached a completely different chapter of their life. Then one day I realized that according to the calendar, I had become one of them. And yet inside, I still felt curious. I still have goals and plans, and I still have things I want to learn, and still have things I want to do. And that was probably the first surprise retirement gave me. I hadn't reached the end of something, I have simply arrived at a different beginning. There are a lot of things people say about retirement, not because they're wrong, but because they're repeated so often that they start sounding like the rules. Retirement means stopping work. Retirement means taking it easy. Retirement means filling your days with hobbies. Retirement means traveling the world. Retirement means slowing down. Well, I remember for my dad, when he retired, he didn't have any hobbies and he really slowed down for a long time. And that's not such a good thing. But the more I experience retirement for myself, the more I realize there isn't one version of it. There isn't a correct way to do retirement. And that's been one of the biggest lessons for me. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Leslie. I came online after my husband passed away. At that point in my life, I wasn't looking for a business. I wasn't looking for a grand plan. And I certainly didn't have any dreams of being an entrepreneur or anything like that. But I was looking for purpose, something to help me get my life back on track, well, on some sort of track, something that would give me a reason to get up and move forward. And over time, that grew into an online business because I also woke up to the fact that actually affiliate marketing was a golden opportunity that worked around my life. But more importantly, it became part of rebuilding my confidence, rebuilding myself. And now I've reached retirement age. I've officially retired. I've received my state pension, and I'm sharing this chapter as it unfolds, not because I have all the answers, because believe you me, I haven't, but because I think many people are asking the same questions. And one thing retirement didn't do was make me stop working. And I think that's another surprise because somewhere along the way, we've been taught that retirement means stopping. No more work, no more contribution, no more building of anything, no more learning. But that's not how it feels to me. And I can remember my husband saying when we talked about this, why would I retire, Leslie? What will I do with my time? I love reading. I love learning. Um, they are my hobbies. Why shouldn't I do it while I enjoy it? And I understand now what he was talking about. I love what I do. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy creating content and learning new things. And I'm enjoying building something that matters. The only difference is that I have chosen to do it. I don't have to. And that feels very different for me. Retirement isn't about doing nothing. It's about having the freedom to decide what deserves my time. And that's a gift. And I think that's a very positive way to look at it. Now, this is my first month of retirement, and I have been working as normal. But the one thing that has changed is the financial pressure. And not because I'm suddenly wealthy, believe you me, far from it. But there's something reassuring about knowing that money will arrive every month, that I'm not under so much pressure to ensure that I have to meet certain benchmarks and tick boxes to know that everything's covered. So it definitely changes things in the background, and it's difficult to explain unless you've experienced it, because that constant mental calculation, it softens a little bit. The constant wondering and planning and checking is eased off a little bit, and I can certainly breathe more easily. And with that comes something else, headspace. For the very first time in a very long time, I have more room to think. Not necessarily more hours in the day. I'm still keeping busy and I still enjoy what I do. But mentally, there's more space because I'm not trying to deal with anxiety or overwhelm or juggling things. I've got space to reflect and to look back, and space to think where I've been and where I want to go next. And okay, I've downsized. I got rid of the big family home. I got rid of the headaches and the worry and the huge bills and the garden that I couldn't maintain on my own. And now I'm in a little house in relation to what I had, but it's still a home that's more than big enough for me. But I can maintain the garden. I don't need to pay someone to do it for me. And I can look after my own house. And it's new. So the bills are much, much smaller. Now, I haven't calculated yet how much I'm actually saving, but I'm pretty sure I'm saving quite a bit. And I've come to realize how little of that many of us allow ourselves while we're busy building careers, raising families, paying bills, and dealing with life. And like many women of my generation, I took time out to raise my children, and I wouldn't change that decision for anything. Being a mum has been the best job in the world. It still remains the greatest privilege of my life. But those choices do have consequences later on. My state pension fell short because of the years I spent away from paid employment. But at the time, I wasn't thinking about pensions. I was raising a family. You know, in my own defense, who does think about pensions when you've got two young children, a baby and a 2-year-old running around? And later, when I finally asked for advice, and I don't know what triggered it, but something was said. And when I checked it out, I was told not to worry about making additional contributions. The advice was I might never live long enough to benefit from it anyway. There might not be a pension available by the time I retired. Looking back, that's quite a thing to hear. Because now here I am, retired, receiving my pension, living this chapter of my life. And it reminds me that life rarely follows those neat calculations that we make along the way. And another thing nobody really prepared me for was the amount of reflection retirement brings. When life slows down, even a little, you start noticing things and you start asking questions. What mattered? What didn't? What was worth worrying about? What wasn't? And I look back now and I know I worried about things that I shouldn't have spent a nanosecond on worrying about. And then what could I do differently? And what would I do exactly the same? You begin to see your own life from a different perspective. And not with regret, that's not what I'm saying, but with a kind of understanding that brings a certain peace. I think that's why the phrase retirement doesn't quite fit how I feel, because retirement sounds like an ending. And this doesn't feel like an ending. It feels more like a continuation, a new chapter, a chance to live a little differently and to focus on what matters most, and a chance to spend time with the people I love. I have a son in Dubai. I'm desperate to see him. I haven't seen him for over a year. And this is now going to allow me to do this. And it also a chance to keep learning, to keep growing, and to keep contributing in ways that feel meaningful. But perhaps the biggest surprise of all is that retirement hasn't made my world smaller. If anything, it's made it bigger because I now have the freedom to choose what fills my days. I can follow my interests, my own new ideas, explore them. I can help people and I can build relationships and I can create, which I love doing, and I can do it at my own pace. When I was younger, I thought retirement was the finish line. And now that I'm here, I'm seeing it so differently. Of course, I am. I think retirement is less about stopping and more about becoming. Not becoming someone new. I'm not reinventing myself. I'm becoming more of who I've always been. And maybe that's the real gift. Not the pension, not the extra time, not even the freedom, but finally having enough space to understand yourself a little bit better. And for me, I think this could be the start of something wonderful. So if you're retired or approaching retirement, I'd love to know what has surprised you most about this stage of life. Let me know in the comments. And if you're new here, I'd love for you to subscribe and join me as I share this journey, both online and through this new chapter of retirement. Until then, take care and I'll see you on the next one.